Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to one and all who have joined here for our BRM Brownback series, episode number 23. I'm really glad and honored to have two of our distinguished guests today join us and take us through the journey of the BRM roadmap at City of Austin. Now, before I get started off with our guests today, I want to give a little bit of background about what we are doing as part of this episode. My name is Suresh GP. I am the managing director of TaUB Solutions, and I'm also the host for the BRM Brownback sessions that we host as part of TaUB Solutions, where we interview real world BRM practitioners who bring in their real world experience from implementing business relationship management capability, and we want to share these best practices to people across the globe. So if you are signing up from different part of the world, please post it on the chat window on LinkedIn saying that from where are you joining, and we would be happy to take you through all the questions. Just before we started, we actually posted a form where you can actually provide your details, where we will be able to understand your real needs on BRM roadmap. With that, with no further ado, I'm going to invite two of our guests for today, Michael Quinn as well as Christopher Ahrens, for joining us today at the BRM roadmap journey. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Christopher, for taking time and being with us. It's been a real honor, and it was great to meet you all in BRM Connect. Was it in last October in San Antonio, Texas? It was very nice to see you, and I hope you're all doing well.
Thank you, Suresh.
Awesome.
Thanks, Suresh.
So why don't we kind of get started? I'm just getting to know people who are coming from different parts. So we have Isaac said, joining us from California Bay Area. Remember, it's pretty too early in the morning for them to join. We have a person, LinkedIn user from Northwest Arkansas. We have Madhusudan Raghavan from, we call Maddie Raghavan, Brampton, Ontario, Canada. We have Fope Akinui from Fort Belfast. So we are getting in a lot of people as we start to go through it. So let's get started off. Mike, you want to kind of take it forward?
Thank you. So for today, we're talking about business roadmaps at the City of Austin, sort of the City of Austin's journey developing and using our roadmaps. So not just creating it, but what's that next step? Our agenda today, we're going to go through some presenter introductions. We'll talk about our business problem and the solution statement that we've created for that business problem statement. We'll talk a little bit about City of Austin roadmaps, what's the tool that we use, some of our setup that goes into that. We'll then switch over to Chris, who's going to actually do a demonstration in our tool, showing off one of the roadmaps for our departments. And then we'll come back to me to talk about some discoveries in roadmaps, and then questions and answers and any follow-up info. As discussed earlier, there is a link for a form that you can submit that lets us know a little bit more about where are you in your roadmap journey, what are some of the challenges you're facing, and if you would like, you can also include your contact info. So the City of Austin, we can continue to work with you, talk with you, learn from you, and hopefully share some info with you afterwards.
Yeah, so there are a few people coming in. So Michael, I'm going to just introduce. We have got our regular viewer, Mohammed Chawasi, joining us. Thank you, Mohammed. He's been a very enthusiastic person, sharing a lot of knowledge. Really appreciate the great work you do, Mohammed. We have Vamsi Krishna Vangaveti also joined in. So please put your city name, country name is from India. We have Christina. I hope you met Christina from Burnsford, Burns and McDonald. She's joining us today. We have Laureano Almiro joining us from Brazil. So there's a lot of people coming in from all different parts of the world. Thank you so much for joining us. Throughout the whole sessions, we're going to take up questions. So please feel free to post in your questions and we'll take it up from there. Okay. Over to
Thanks
you.
for that reminder. So while questions and answers is listed at the end, if you have questions during the session, please don't hesitate, put them in the chat, and then we'll take a minute to answer those questions so we don't forget them by the end. So let's meet our presenters. Chris.
Thanks, Michael. My name is Chris Ahrens. I've been with the city for about 10 years now. I've got my PMP, I've got my CBRM as of last year. I actually went through that training with Suresh. And the departments that I'm currently supporting are Austin Resource Recovery, which is our solid waste services department, transportation, law, the city clerk's office, development services, the downtown Austin Community Corps, and the municipal court. Michael, I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks. So I'm Michael Quinn. I'm a BRMP and a PMP. I'm actually not a BRM. I'm a corporate manager. I help lead a team of BRMs, which includes Chris and 4 other business relationship managers. So this puts me in a unique position where I'm really more focused on developing our BRM program, providing support to the BRMs full time. Right now, we have 5 business relationship managers. I just added 2 business analysts, and we have 1 manager, which is myself.
Awesome. So, Mike, to that point, how long have you been in that particular BRM journey? Or when did the BRM journey, give us a little bit of background on when did this BRM journey started off in city of Austin?
Okay. So our BRM program started as a pilot in 2018. This was actually a recommendation from IBM based on some feedback from our different departments for some of the pain points they had with IT. So we started as a pilot in 2018 with 4 people working part-time as BRMs. In late 2019, we hired 4 full-time BRMs. And in 2020, early 2020, you probably all know, is when COVID occurred.
Right.
So for us, a lot of our departments, a lot of our partners, their first introduction to BRM was through COVID.
Right.
Since then, we've added new BRMs. Our original team has turned over 100%. So we have a brand new group since 2021. And we've been slowly expanding the departments that we work with across the city. We work with about half the departments in the city right now with a goal to work with every department soon.
Awesome. And just as a question, because everybody who's attending here would like to know about BRMs and stuff. I know that we're jumping the gun, but do the departments see the value of the BRM? I know that we have had a lot of conversations, but give a little of sense of what's the value perception of the BRM within the city and within the departments based on the work that you've done. I know a lot of work has gone in the last year or so to build this something of where you are. But for our viewers, how is that trust of the business partners has been since the last 2 years that you have built such kind of a program?
Well, I think the departments that we work with really enjoy working with their BRM. I've gotten feedback that the business relationship manager, they've described them as a catalyst to get things moving.
Right.
Departments that have had trouble moving forward on an IT initiative, they found that the BRM is somebody that can help them start that. We've had large projects in the past that we tried to do that failed and the project was canceled. We tried it again around 6-7 years later, and the project's been successful so far. And I think part of that's due to a business relationship manager was introduced to that project and really helped navigate the department politics and the communication between multiple departments. So that's been great. We do face a marketing deficit right now. Not every department in the city knows about us yet.
Sure.
So we're trying to market ourselves more to our customers, let them know more about what we do, create sort of a hub where people can go to learn about our team, and hopefully they can request to be put at the front of the list to be that next department that we work with.
Awesome. We also have Shelly Bowman joining us from Washington, D.C. Hopefully he's there. Thanks, Shelly, for joining us. Okay, we can get started off for your move forward on the next steps. Yeah.
So as we were putting together our presentation today, we were talking about what is the business problem that we're trying to solve with roadmaps. So before we jump in and say, let's make a roadmap, let's really understand what are the business problems that a roadmap could address. And I think everybody that's in this meeting or this session today, you're probably being faced with this problem. Your partners, your customers, they all have a lot of needs from you as a service provider. And at the City of Austin, we definitely felt this. Our customers are coming to us, their requests contradict other requests. So they're asking us for one thing one week, and then they're changing it what they want the next week. We have partners that are unaware what others have requested. We just had this last week, actually. A department asked us to work on something, and we found out somebody else in that department, unbeknownst to us and their department, was also working on it. We see that requests don't align with strategy. In the city of Austin, we're really trying to organize our BRM to be strategic. And so we'll often get requests that don't fit with that strategy. I want to go cloud first, but now I'm trying to buy servers. What's happening there? Why the disconnect? And then this last one, we've also just found departments, they don't have a strategy to start with. We want to talk about the future. Most departments in the city, they kind of think 12 months at a time. How do I get from one fiscal year to the next? And especially in IT, for IT projects, some of those can run 3 years.
Right.
So it's been very difficult for those departments without that strategy to get those projects started because they're not thinking long-term enough.
And I think people can resonate this very much in the part. I was just talking to one of my client on the other day. They say that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And everybody is busy with some of the projects. And then when you put that into the big scale, people say, oh, I never knew that you were doing it. I mean, it really resonates to the point that we're talking about. A lot of people are inundated with a lot of projects and stuff. And it's also a part of confusion. So I'm definitely sure people will relate to this problem statement.
Yeah. So if that's our problem statement, then what's the solution statement? Well, everyone here, we all kind of think we all kind of have an idea what the solution is, which is a roadmap. The BRM Institute, through the BRM Body of Knowledge, they recommend roadmaps. It's a great tool. It's a way to visualize your business need. It's a way to develop consensus because everybody can see something together and agree on it. Increases the knowledge of the work across the business. You're going to see this during Chris's demonstration. We're able to look at a department sort of holistically and show everything that's happening in that department. It's a place to align strategy, and it's also a place to create strategy. So that's the first part of our solution statement. Everyone here has probably got some natural questions that come from that, which is, okay, I want to do a roadmap, but how do I start? What information do I gather? And then how do I start marketing that value from the roadmap so people want to keep working on it? People want to sign up to work with us through roadmaps. So this is the second part of our solution statement. And this is really specific to the city of Austin. So for the city of Austin, what we found is that you can start a roadmap fairly quickly. You just have to do a little bit of preparation, a little bit of discussion. That's helpful at the beginning, but you don't have to have long, in-depth discussions before you jump in and start doing the roadmap. You can always go back and tweak your roadmaps after the fact. The most important thing is to start, to do something. You have to remember that if you're starting from a place of zero, anything you do is going to be a huge leap forward. You may not be 100% perfect, but going from 0 to 50% is a big jump. You're never going to get a jump that large ever again when you start doing some of this work. There's a lot of roadmap tools out there. If you do a search, there's plenty of ways that you can build a roadmap, whether that's in Visio, Excel, Project, SharePoint, Roadmonk, that's the tool that the city uses. The tool you use really will determine how you can use your roadmaps, though. So for some of these tools, they're excellent at integrating with other solutions, building certain types of roadmaps. Other tools are not going to be as great at that. So what you want to do with your roadmap, that's probably one of those questions you want to answer. But just remember, your roadmap, you can still tweak after the fact. A lot of these tools, with the exception of Visio, they're going to let you export your data. Right. It's going to export the data into a sort of a tabular format. You can import it into another tool. So to go from Excel to Project, it's not going to be as painful as you think. The most important thing here, again, let's get started as soon as we can. Let's try to start creating some of that value. And one of the last things for the city of Austin that we've been using roadmaps to try to solve is sharing them. It's great to put together an amazing roadmap, to have this document, but if you're not sharing it with anybody, if nobody else is seeing it, then you're not creating the value. So for us, we share our roadmaps with our partner departments. We can export our roadmaps to URLs so they have access without needing the tool. And we're trying to share them with everyone that we can, not just with the partner department. We share with our IT teams. We share with our IT executives. With the idea being, the more eyes we get on it, the better the roadmap's going to become over time. It's going to evolve as people see it and provide their input.
So one question, Mike, on that side, when you said, I love the concept about sharing the roadmap where possible with stakeholders. Um, when you were soliciting information and feedback from your stakeholders, was there a kind of fine tuning to look at how the roadmap should look like? Because when you start opening it up to everybody, everybody has got a suggestion or an insight. Nothing against that, but you need to probably standardize and do that. So was there a kind of a exercise done to find out curating this whole roadmap in consensus with different kind of stakeholders from different departments?
So you kind of jumped ahead a little bit there, Suresh. You kind of stealing my thunder because we do talk about standardizing. My team did go through an exercise last summer. So we let each BRM sort of run in their own direction.
Right.
And one of my jobs supporting the BRM group is I need to look across all roadmaps.
Sure.
And the way that our tool works, you have to standardize a little bit. There has to be some shared information on roadmaps. So we took some time. We developed a common language so that we could standardize and look across all our roadmaps. We're actually going to dive into some of those insights later in this presentation.
Sure.
And then for the departments, we really encourage our departments to not filter themselves. Just give us information, any idea you have, anything that you think you might be working on. Let's add it to our roadmap. Let's put it into a brainstorm section. And as we have further conversations, then we'll identify what's worth moving forward based on its value. But we try not to let departments self-censor.
Sure.
Otherwise, we find that we end up missing out on information.
Sure. There's a one question from Mohammed asking, as you started to talk about roadmaps, Mohammed Chawoshi's question is, will you share some infographic about the roadmap? Is it like a framework? So people are kind of wanting to know a little bit. So I think you're sure that you will get some information of how they've done that. So going to be a demo. Is it right, Mike,
Yes.
for showing that? Okay.
Awesome. Oh, yeah. So we'll have a demo, and then Chris will be able to walk through some of the standardized fields we have, how those work with the roadmap, and then if there's any follow-up questions afterwards, we can always come back to the tool and show some more.
Sure.
Okay. So a brief background about our roadmaps. We're using a tool called RoadMonk. We selected this tool around 4 years ago. It's a web-based tool. We really like it because it makes it easy to share roadmaps. It's as simple as clicking a button, creating a URL, and then sending that URL to anybody. Nobody needs access to the tool to view the roadmap then. And also one of the nice things about the export to a URL is that it preserves all the roadmap info. So this is something that Chris can also show. You can get scope statements and all the details of your roadmap item. It's not just a flat image.
Sure.
And one of the really big items that RoadMonk provides us is the ability to aggregate roadmaps. This is a core requirement for our BRM group. We're part of the city's central IT department. And for central IT, it needs to have insight into departments to identify enterprise trends. So having a tool that lets us look at multiple roadmaps simultaneously was really important. Right now we have 17 roadmaps for 17 departments, and across those 17 roadmaps, there's over 400 roadmap items. So
Wow.
That's projects, initiatives, just ideas on things they want to work on, things that are in progress, things that we placed on hold or canceled. And so you figure if we expand to 40 departments, we're probably looking at 800 to 1,000 upcoming projects, which at that point, because it's going to give us a lot of insight.
Right.
We talked about this a little bit earlier. My team, we did take some time during the summer to develop some roadmap standards. So this is kind of going back to what I talked about earlier. You can start your roadmap. There's nothing that says you can't advance your roadmap. You can't create new standards. You can't update them over time as you mature. And that's something that we found we had to do with our roadmaps. We had a lot of meetings to discuss it. We probably had 13 to 14 hours of meetings. And we got a lot of great dialogue and debate around a common language, terms, what fields should be necessary for the roadmaps. We had a lot of debate around what does the definition of brainstorm mean? What's the definition of idea? But those types of discussions have been really helpful for our team because now we're all level set.
I think this magnitude is amazing, Mike, because 17 roadmaps for 17 departments all pulled it over together is such an amazing feat. And we can't see how much that value has been brought over to have that common level of visibility across the departments so that we can actually also reduce some of the wastages, because we know that this is on priority. We can look at shared resources and how that's going to focus and flow around, and that's also going to help us to manage those things in more optimized manner. So I think this is brilliant.
Thank you. So I'm going to throw things over to Chris now to go through a demonstration of our RoadMonk tool. He'll talk about a few different items, and then I'll be back afterwards.
Sure. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you,
Okay,
Michael.
welcome, Chris. One of the things I know you already saw in the chat, there's a lot of conversations for, is it going to be a framework? Is it a roadmap? So everybody is quite keen to look at the demo aspect of it. So get us kickstarted.
That's great. Can you pull up my,
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, so as Michael mentioned, we use RoadMonk. One of the primary reasons why we use it is because it's browser-based, and we have different sharing levels. So as you can see on this one, I'm the owner of this roadmap, and there are a number of different people that I can easily share the roadmap with. And that's before it even gets to the publishing stage. So all of these people can have access to this tool. There are different color palettes. So we can change, how we want different colors to look, how we want it to be laid out. And this is something that we kind of leave up to the BRM and the business partner group, because some people we found have different preferences in how it looks, and that doesn't impact Michael's ability to roll up the map into higher level, findings.
Right.
I wanted to.
And does it also mean that, Chris, that you can still have access to that when you are in the stage of creation? Would that still be, I mean, within the whole team, but not outside the team, because you still are you're sanctifying the whole part and area. So this is basically with the core group that is owning this particular roadmap.
Absolutely. So the 5 people that this is shared with, they're people that are on the team that are going to get updates whenever things are changed, and they're able to go in and, if I was out, they can come in and help the department and edit this roadmap and work there. So one of the things we also talked about was the ability to export. As you can see here, it's got different, you can export it to URL, which is typically what we use, so that I can share it with my business partner departments very, very easily. But you also have other options here. You could do HTML, you could do export to CSV. So I wanted to show very quickly how there are different kind of ways that you can look at it. So this is our swim lane view for fiscal year 23 for the city clerk's office. And if I click here, you can see it in more of an items view, if that's more comfortable to you while you're developing. So if I have to add a large number of things, I'll come in here and I will just click add new item and keep going, so that it doesn't slow down the process.
Is these items, Chris, more of initiatives or programs? How do you qualify this as an item?
So one of the things that I do whenever I'm working with my business partners is early on, when we're working on like customer value hierarchy, I'll ask drill down questions like any projects that they know of that are coming up, anything that's ongoing. If they have a location where they publish projects, I actually have some business partners that'll have, an external or internal website where they publish that. So I can go grab that information instead of having to constantly ask them for updates on that. So I'll also take items out of that customer value hierarchy discussion, and add those to the brainstorm column here. So in a second, I'm going to talk about how we defined each of the columns, and how we kind of can graduate something from one column to the next one. But most of these that are on here are actual projects. So these are going to be items that are going on with our business partner that are going to impact our department, which is the central IT for the city of Austin. So anything that they have that's going to impact us, we want to make sure that we have it there. And I've broken up this map by the actual work functions, so the separate groups that they have within the city clerk's office. so that really quickly we can look and see which groups are handling what type of topics. Does that answer your question, Suresh?
Yep. And for someone who just joined, Srinivas Ramachandran, he's just asking, what tool is this? You said Road Monk?
It's Road Monk.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Awesome.
So normally we'll start developing in the swim lane view, because as I'm working with my business partners, I can easily add an item throughout discussion. So if this will let me go here, let's say someone mentioned that they have something that they want to discuss in the future. It's not developed as far to being a project yet. It's in the maybe column, right? And one of the things that we talked about when we sat down and started standardizing how these work is a key question for that brainstorming column is, can we, right? Because this is a collection of items that may develop into a project. So once I've created that, I can go in here and say, the department wants to develop a new tool. Let's say issues. So I can add any attachments. I can do sub items or linked items if there's some dependencies to other items that are already in here. I can set a date range for when that would take place. One of the things that we've started doing early on is, if we're just discussing this, hey, is it soon or is this in the future? Because we may not know what dates this is going to be addressed. So that's one of the things that we found is really helpful with this tool, is having that ability, and then to later go back and add in dates when we have more information.
So Chris, there was one question that was asked by Simol. We in Driscoll's include only prioritized items on our roadmaps. So is that the same? Or what about City of Austin?
So that's a spot where we differ, because we want to make sure that that brainstorm is able to capture anything that they want to kind of explore. So it's not really, the brainstorm column isn't really something that's going to be done quite yet, right? We're still exploring it. We're trying to see if it can get to the point of ideation, which is going to be that next column that we have. Let's go ahead and save that.
Well, that's also good, Chris, because you mentioned that. Because what's going to happen is you give everybody an opportunity to exercise their vote, right? And it's also about making sure that everybody's voice is heard. I mean, obviously, there is some level of pruning and tuning around, but why do we restrict? Because that's the place where everybody's ideas are there, and you can have an ideation parking lot if it's not going to be feasible in FY23 to put forward, but at least that idea has come through. So I like the backlog.
Exactly. That's exactly how we use it. It's like a backlog. And I found with my business partners, it does really add that kind of feeling of being heard. So they know it's an item on here. Hey, we haven't set a date range to it yet, but it's been captured and it's there. And when it becomes a priority, we can start moving it through the further stages.
Yeah. There's one more question that's happening. I think it's a right question here. Is there a standard frequency to update this? Because the macros, which means the macro project, would mostly be fixed, but the micro items might be a little more fluid, but the line items under a particular project or a program. So is there a way to connect through a change management process? I mean, sometimes we people are very heavy on process-driven approach. So is there a way that there is a governance team in place from a flow perspective?
That's a great question. So we do not have that set up right now, because what we typically do on our team is we meet with our business partners anywhere between, when we're starting off, sometimes it's bi-weekly, right? We have a lot of meetings up front, and then it may fall back to monthly or quarterly. So I update the roadmap as needed. I don't have like a set, but I do have a set schedule quarterly to review the roadmaps. So I'll have a review session with my business partners quarterly.
Sure. Yeah.
So let's say, we had a second meeting and we started talking about it, and now we have more information, right? We know that, this is now hitting that idea stage. We want to explore it. We don't have a project team in place for it yet, but we know that it requires further analysis. We're going to start researching it. We're going to look at what our business requirements are to do it. This is when our item has gone from that brainstorm, like, can we do this, to now it's like, should we do this? And if so, how would we do it? Like, how are we going to be successful with this? So once it goes through that, and we have 2 BSAs now on our team, which we're very grateful for, that can help with some of that business requirement gathering and doing some of that research and data analysis, we can further get into actually kicking off a project and having it in that in progress state, right? So at this point, it's something that's in active development. It is in the actual execution phase. So if it's in a project, it's going to be being executed at that point, and it's going to be there at the point until we're working up to either delivering the product, or if it goes on hold or gets canceled. Which, one of the things we'll talk about in a second, we've spent a lot of time in trying to make sure that canceled doesn't have a negative connotation in our group, because that means that it looked like a good opportunity. We're looking at it, we're developing it, but sometimes the whole landscape can change, or business needs change. And so we've made sure that our business partners understand that just because something gets into canceled, that's not a negative thing at all.
Sure.
That just
and it's also could be the timing itself. I mean, COVID-19 was a classic example. I mean, you had all your planned projects, by the time something hits the road, we said, hey, come on, guys, we need to kind of regroup and repurpose it, which actually makes a lot of sense to do that.
Absolutely. So while things are in this in progress state, our main question that we ask ourselves are, how are we doing, right? How are we measuring success? What's going on, or what milestones are we hitting? We do have this on hold. So at that point, it's the question that the BRMs are asking ourselves, and that we're working together as a team, is, why are we waiting, right? Why has this piece been put on hold? There have been, moments where it may have gone up. We may have a charter and everything developed, but then maybe there's not availability right now with PMO. Right. So we'll move that to the on hold status and wait until we can get a project manager assigned, and then we can update the card. Sorry, I've got a dog with a cone on beside me who's trying to rub. So
we have another visitor at the home. Very good. We have full house. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No worries.
So then, after it's gone through in progress, if it ended up on hold, it would of course go back to in progress until it made its way to being completed. So at that point, we define it as being signed off on. So it's not just the work is completed, but it's actually been delivered and accepted by the business partner. So there's no additional work required for any of these items. And at this point, as BRMs, we're going to be focusing on measuring the value that was delivered to the department, right? So our conversation from then on is going to be, what were the results of it? What worked? What didn't work? Let's talk about any best practices that came out of it, or any lessons learned as far as our involvement in it.
So do you also have this concept of extend and expand that we talked about in business relationship management? Like, once the project goes live, it probably did not realize the full value as it might have expected. So if I want to spin off, Chris, a service improvement plan or something, is there a way that we can tie between one project to another project, so that we know there is a continuation from what you left to a new initiative or a project?
Exactly. And what I would do is create a sub item so that it could come off of that, and then we could track that as well as a further continuation to add more value as a spin off of this.
Sure.
And then we have already discussed the canceled, but just to kind of tell you what we set as the definition, it's been determined not to move forward, even though there's resources available, because if there was a resource issue, it would be on hold. But at this point, it's gone forward to being a canceled thing. We do have our internal question at that point is going to be, why are we not doing this? Because we want to capture the reasoning behind why this went from something that was in progress to then being canceled. So this is the swim lane view. We use this when we're looking at things normally at the kind of beginning. As I said, we can have the bucket, but at some point we might want to shift from the bucket to an actual date range. And so this tool also has a timeline view. And this is something that we use once it's more understood and it's matured as an idea. We'll add it here to the timeline view. This one is for FY23 as well. Once we have this and we can then show, okay, this is what is planned and this is what's going on with your group this year, I'll go through and create that export, and we can do a URL directly from there. Clicked. Here we go.
So one question, Chris, this is great. In terms of resource, I know that if you look at some of these projects, they're kind of parallel running through, like, for example, the EDMS upgrade phase 2 or internal election history. So from a resource augmentation perspective and other stuff, how is that handled? Is it that kind of behind the scenes that we know, okay, because I would have someone who's part of both the speaker sign-up upgrade as well as internal election history. I'm just taking an arbitrary example, right? So how am I going to allocate my time between the work that I'm going to do for project A and project B? Would that be something visible?
So are you saying as far as like our group, like the BRM or centralized
Yeah,
IT?
so it could be BRM, like, for example, you're facing a business partner, the two projects that you own, in terms of how we can manage that.
So our project management office, if they're working on things in some of the other centralized IT groups, they will deal with that. But we can also report out, and I think that Michael will get more in depth on this, but one of the items in here would be the project manager assigned. So we have some of that information where we can see, is someone being, hit with too much, or are they being underutilized or overutilized? Because we have that ability inside of here. Now, one of the other things that we use, to go back to one of the earlier questions, like when we do updates, maybe the item itself isn't updated, but there may be updates around what's going on. So we can actually use the activities to put in notes for why.
That's kind of an audit trail, which clearly explains what happened, what's been done before. So anybody who has a look at it knows the whole change that has happened and why you're doing the status. Right?
Exactly. And as far as the business group, like our business partner for these are their work groups. So it also helps show if there's a lot going in that work group at the same period.
So you're saying that this is work group, admin is a work group, records, and these are the things at any point of time I'm going through it. So we know how much resources do we have, do the pure math to see whether we are overloaded or we're adequately staffed to do that. But this is the one question, again, I'm just jumping a little bit, is these are all good for a planned projects or kind of things that you do it. Is this going to be a part for also the unplanned ones as they come in? So is that going to be a way that we're going to restrict what will fit under the roadmap and what will not?
I mean, if there was something that was unplanned that came up, right? I'm in a meeting and I find out that this is happening right now. Yes, we would add that directly to the idea columns, because it's already being researched and it's going to be done, right? It's not in the, hey, can we do this? It's the, how do we do this? So that would be something that would just start directly in that idea column.
Right. So there are a couple of questions that's come in. One is, does the tool have the ability to track? And can we templatize a model that worked really well?
So to track, Which items are you trying to track?
So basically, I think the progress update, what has happened, the status, I think I would say for a project manager, if they had already a timeline, like for the example, the February to the March time frame, so they need to know, okay, what's the current status of it? Has it progressed forward? Has all the line items of activities being done? So it's kind of the way that we can track progress towards, red, amber, green. That's what I presume.
Right. So it doesn't have like the color coding like we've seen before, right?
Sure.
Like as to what status it is.
Right.
But there are integrations, so you could integrate it into Jira.
Yes.
We haven't set those up,
Sure.
but let me see if there is. You can also sync it to a calendar so that in, let's say, in Outlook, you would have a reminder pop up that this item was supposed to kick off today.
Sure.
That isn't something we haven't had in our team. We haven't had as much of a need to have that tracking because I have 8 departments right now, and most of us have around 8 departments because we're covering right now for a couple of extra team members, but we're generally able to track ourselves, right, where things are going, and then we will keep our notes and our activities updated inside of this so that if someone else needs to come behind us, they're able to then pick up and see where we were.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm curious about doing some of that where it would be more from the development side, right? Being like, is this item on schedule or not?
Yeah. What we was mentioning was the aging part, right? How long has that particular activity in being in that particular place, and then kind of interfacing, which you said about adapters with ServiceNow or MS projects, so kind of flow from bi-directional. I mean, basically, we know how is this pulling it up to the new interface, right? So,
And I think that's a great question. It's not something that I have dug into yet,
right.
but I want to capture that and look further into that
Sure.
ability as well.
Yeah. Right.
So
So I think we'll give Chris to go and complete, and we'll take the questions last. I know that we have been intervening a lot, but just please go ahead and complete your stuff, and we'll take the questions at the last.
well, I mean, I think, let's see, we went through the swim lane, we looked at the timeline view, which is going to show, right, if you had sub items, they would show up on this timeline view. So that might help some of that tracking as well. So not as far as what the status is, but how long it's been ongoing. So
Sure.
you could get very in depth on these items and say that this upgrade phase has 5 subtasks that are under it, and you could see where they all fit.
And you also have the milestones view on the
Right.
parallel tab, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, this map doesn't have them, but yes, you could set
You can have
milestones for
that.
each one of those.
So basically, like in a PMP, we'll have a critical path about our
Mm-hmm.
milestone that we need to absolutely achieve to move forward. So that could give us an indicator of those bullets that would probably steer us in the right direction.
Right. And that shy of, I think, did we show how this is what I would then be able to share with my business partner if I wanted to share the timeline view. So they would see the line of where we currently were, and these are the items that were in development, and you can see that some of these have ended. So they've already moved to a completed stage or a canceled stage, so that they can see it a snapshot and show to their executive team as well, hey, this is what we've been able to achieve over this last quarter.
Would you also get access to all the departments' roadmap at one thing? Because this is specifically for city clerk. Let's say you have the other departments.
So Michael has been working on some of the other views that would include multiple departments so that he can look at themes. And I think
Sure.
he'll discuss that when I hand it back to him.
Okay.
And that's what I was going to cover as far as with the demo
Awesome.
today, unless there's
Excellent.
other questions we want to cover right now.
Awesome. So we'll bring in up Mike as well to do that. This is so much. You saw how much questions have kind of starting to come over. So I'm sure that's kind of getting over. But let's hear from Mike as well, because one of the things is this looks great. I mean, Chris, you did a great demo for us to understand how the roadmap goes in. But everybody now wants to. This is great. But what happens when you have multiple departments? I mean, I'm just looking at from a BRM perspective, because as we serve our business partners, we want to also cascade some of the best practices which works well, doesn't work well. So from that particular perspective, what's the kind of the mode to roll this up to multiple departments and have a single unified view, which would probably help us also navigate it, because this is huge. This is really huge. Yeah.
So that's actually the next part of the presentation. Chris didn't show that view. One of the things when you have 400 or 500 roadmap items is that you end up with a lot of information on your screen all at once. So there's some refining that needs to happen there, some filtering. So one of the things that our team's focused on is at least annually, we want to create some type of roadmap report out. So the standards and preparation that we did is what allows us to combine those roadmaps. Like I said, 17 roadmaps, about 400 projects. And we're looking for trends. I reported out last September to our executive team, as well as the different operational teams and departments. And our focus was on upcoming need. So not what's in progress. Let's talk about the next year so we can start to get ready for it. And this is one of the discoveries that we pulled out. My chart got cut off a little bit here at the bottom. But essentially, we were able to look at the business need or the theme. So one of the fields that we've created for our roadmap is focused on what's driving this from the department. Why do they need this? What's the underlying business problem they're solving? And by pulling those items, by asking the BRMs to categorize those items, it now lets us create this chart to see where is the greatest upcoming need. And we have two big items that take up most of over 50% of all of our upcoming need, which is around improving an existing system or digital process. So this is a department, they have a tool, they want to make the tool better. I want to do more of that tool. Or I have a digital process in my tool, I want to expand on it. Let's add another process to the tool. And another big item at the city is around advice on best practices or IT governance. Departments, they're trying to understand how should I do this? What are the requirements? What are the technical requirements? What are the security requirements I need to know if I'm going to go out and get a tool? The tool is only for my department. It's not going to get used anywhere else. So central IT is not going to own it. The department's going to be responsible for that. What are the things I have to keep in mind? How do I run that tool from a best practice perspective so that I don't run into contract problems? In this section, we get a lot of questions around contracts. How do I make a better contract with a vendor so that I get the solution I need? So as we were talking with our executives and sharing this information, these are two big areas that we focused on about what can we do to advance these at the city over the next year.
Oh, this is great, because one of the things I love about this one, Mike and Chris, is that as you start to get these initiatives around it, you're kind of bucketing it down. Where is the most important driver for the city is concerned? That gives you a little bit of a forecast of where is the most value-added activity from a BRM standpoint that we're going to contribute to the overall business purpose, right? And I think it's very clear. Everybody is talking about digitization. Everybody is trying to look at how we can move up the value chain. So that's kind of the big part that is helping around. There's a couple of questions I wanted to kind of ask, and probably this is a good starting point. Now, as we start to look at rollout of these cases, a question from Sheetal is, how do we measure effectiveness of a BRM in this case? Do we have a metric or a satisfaction survey rolled out in terms of the value that the BRM makes? Because I think, Chris, you mentioned about the value realization part, that we get involved as the project gets to a completion. So how are BRMs being evaluated from a metric standpoint or measurement standpoint to see whether we did a great job or not?
So we do have satisfaction surveys. We actually have two. I have a survey that it gets sent out every 6 months about the business relationship manager. So what are the activities and the actions that they're doing, and what's the feedback on their performance working with their business partners? And then we also have a survey that's sent out every 6 months about satisfaction with the program itself, the BRM capability. So is the program returning value to your department? Are you seeing that value? Are we marketing and communicating that value to you? I can tell you that value management is kind of new at the City of Austin. We're just starting that in our BRM program, but that is a place that, just as Chris mentioned, as we get to the end of projects, we're trying to update those processes so that the BRM is coming back in and doing some type of value measurement.
Right.
And then also at the beginning, as we talk about ideas, we want to do value plans up front as well, so we can compare the two.
Awesome.
So here's a sample slide from the presentation that I gave to our executive team talking about some of the discoveries we had. And this one is specifically on implementing a new system. So we provided a definition for that. And then I provided a summary of what I've seen across all the roadmaps for this particular item. So implement new system, where was that? That was about 40 different projects. So in this instance, we saw that a lot of departments are looking at asset management. That's a recurring need from multiple departments. Departments have been asking about a specific tool called ArcGIS Indoor so they can map their floor plans. And then we see several requests for tools unique to departments, but based on what the departments have described, there's probably an opportunity to consolidate to a single platform there. We also provide some suggestions to our executive team. They can be as simple as guidance on asset management solutions. We have 2 or 3 asset tools at the city. What's the right tool for the right type of work? There needs to be a strategy around department apps and low-code, no-code solutions.
Right.
We're looking at this a lot more at the city now. Should we be looking at a low-code, no-code customer relationship management tool that could be broadly applied to multiple departments and used by multiple departments instead of buying one-off solutions?
Correct.
And then if we are going to go that route, what would be the appropriate low-code, no-code CRM for the city? So these are suggestions.
There's a very important part that you mentioned, Mike, is the consolidation of our tools. And because today, sometimes when we talk with a lot of clients globally, there's a level of shadow IT, right? Everybody purchases pens of software because it's easy to look at making a purchase using a corporate card. And so everybody has got this whole disparate list of tools. So making a consolidation of whether this tool relevant, we have purchased some of the licenses, that's going to be a nightmare in many of the organizations.
So you bring up an interesting point there. And this is actually something that my team are tackling right now. My group, we own our IT service catalog. That's something that I pushed for. I wanted our team to own that because the catalog is a fundamental part of the BRM relationship maturity, taking us from being an ad hoc org to a more mature relationship. As part of that, we're also adjusting our IT purchasing processes so that if something is not part of the catalog, the BRM is getting flagged for that. And the BRM is getting a ticket essentially saying, hey, I need you to do some more research into this. Figure out why are you buying something that's not in the catalog. Right. So we're trying to tackle that at the forefront as well before dollars get expended.
Awesome.
So in addition to these sort of micro trends for each of these discoveries or categories, we also looked at macro trends. So across all of the items, what are some of the big trends that we see? Developing a central repository for IT information. As we look at sort of the root cause or the possible solution for a lot of these items, this came up repeatedly. A lot of departments are looking to central IT around system modernization guidance, documentation, and it needs to be someplace that if we are creating those guidelines, it has to be someplace everybody can access it. Right now, each department is trying to solve these problems on their own. They're trying to come up with their own standards. A recommendation was to provide departments with a single place to see which applications are being retired, the timeline for those applications, answering their frequently asked questions. Right. This is a common complaint from departments right now. You're retiring a tool, a central IT. I don't know what my next steps are. Where do I go? What's that next tool? How do I know what's being retired so I don't end up buying a tool that goes away in 6 months?
Correct.
A macro trend is around developing IT strategy to guide not just CTM, which is central IT, and department IT. So what is our strategy going to be for some of these tools? We have a set of financial tools. They're kind of old. They need to be upgraded, but departments keep coming back and asking to interface and integrate with them. Should we integrate? Should we delay? Those are places that we really need strategy at the executive level.
Right.
to inform those departments and their upcoming projects.
It's kind of a modernization exercise that people will know from a landscape perspective, like monolithic applications to microservices or moving to a cloud. I mean, easy said than done, because you need to still look at have to method to madness in this whole strategy, right?
Yeah, and for my team, strategy is the term we keep coming back to. We want to work strategically. We want to talk about where are you going, why, what do you want to be, and then we'll work on how to get there. There was a really great question as Chris was doing his demo around how often do you update your roadmaps? And that's really going to depend on the type of work you're talking about. If you're working very operationally with your department, you probably have updates on your roadmaps weekly or monthly. But if we're talking strategically, we probably shouldn't be changing strategy every 3 months. So that's a place where your roadmap is probably going to have a little bit more stability to it. And that also ties into another question when Chris was doing his demo around tracking resources on projects.
Right.
So for us, our roadmaps, we're not using them for project management.
Right.
So a project plan is probably going to break down a specific item into lots of steps. For us, we're representing it as a single item on the roadmap. So we're trying to keep that BRM at a very high level, really focused on major risk to the department, the major value or capability being enabled, and we don't get into the weeds of the project at that point.
Sure. Okay, just we have 4 minutes to go, so we'll see if there's any more slides, and then we'll take some questions from the
Yeah, and the last item, just coordinate work with other groups through planning instead of ad hoc. We're hearing about work for different teams in the department. It makes a lot more sense for us to bring those teams in, show them roadmaps. Here's what departments are asking for, and then let them plan their year, as opposed to they're just getting ad hoc requests. And that is the end of our presentation.
Awesome. So we have a few questions coming in, and please, team, you have the email address of Chris and Michael to reach out to a couple of feedback coming in. Thank you, Chris, for the demo on RoadMonk. I would like to explore this in our organization as a tool for BRMs. There's one more question from a LinkedIn user. Will a recording of this be available? Because we are also looking at RoadMonk. Yes, the recording will be available. Then do follow us on TaUB Solutions. We will put a link to the post so that you can listen to the recording by Friday, right? So we'll make that work. One question is so keep your questions coming in if you have any thing. One of the questions, Chris, is the fields that you mentioned out of the box on RoadMonk, or did you kind of customize any fields specifically for City of Austin?
So as far as the columns that I discussed, we created those. So inside of RoadMonk, it has the ability to create fields, but we had, like Michael said, probably 14 hours of discussions around making sure we defined each one of them so that they were used in a standardized manner across the organization.
Yeah, RoadMonk is really going to give you a blank canvas. All they have out of the box is the name of the item and a date field. So everything after that you're going to have to create, but you can create fields and also share them across roadmaps. That's a big thing for us.
Awesome. So we just got 2 minutes under those things, but there is some lot of feedback of positivity. Thank you, Michael and Chris, and thank you, Suresh, for this event. So I hope there are a lot of people getting value out of this whole session. Now, follow-up question, and as you start to look at it, what does the future look like for City of Austin from a roadmap standpoint, Mike and Chris? Because you have accomplished a lot of things, and thanks for sharing your valuable insights to move that. But what is next? What's the future look like for City of Austin BRMs as you navigate through this journey?
Oh, well, I think a big one for us is expanding to all departments, making sure that we are working with every department. A unique thing about the City of Austin is that our Chief Information Officer is accountable for all IT spending, even though a lot of that IT spending occurs outside of our department. So working with every department would then allow us to be able to influence that. That's a place that we're probably going to start reporting on that. How much of the city's total IT spend does the CIO directly control, and how much is that CIO influencing it through the BRM? I think that part of the future for our team is also standardizing. We've worked in an ad hoc startup phase for a while now, and that's been great getting the team off the ground. But as we start talking about expanding the group, having a lot more departments per BRM, one of our goals is to really take us into an operational maturity.
Sure.
So that's something we'll be focusing on.
And also, there was one question that was there a pushback from your city departments to building roadmaps?
I can actually take that one. I have, with some departments, received pushback on building roadmaps. One of the interesting things was one of the groups that had pushback. They're like, we already kind of do that. We track some of that information on our own. They actually had a website that they shared with me where they published that, and I took it and I put it through this treatment and put it in RoadMonk and showed it to them in our next meeting. And they were so impressed that now that's kind of overcome that resistance. So now they see the value and enjoyed seeing it presented in that manner. So that was a big win.
Awesome. So we can talk for hours. Thank you so much, Mike and Chris, for an enlightening session today. That's the time that we have for this BRM Brown Bag. As you know, we have Christopher and Michael's email address. If you want to have further conversations, further things, please feel free to reach out to them. As I said, if you have given your contact email address and other stuff, they'll be happy to share more information. But you know that the best thing about, which I like about this BRM Brown Bag sessions that we conduct, is about free flow of knowledge sharing by practitioners, real world practitioners on the ground to get everybody benefited. So I hope you enjoyed the session with Chris and Michael for the City of Austin. So let's give a round of applause for Chris and Mike for City of Austin journey. And I hope that it will inspire more people to step into the things. And we hope to see you at the BRM Connect in Portland, Oregon. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.